Dan, all right, man, we'll go to the insurance stuff now. Or actually,
and
just talk
everyone
about
tunes out.
Yeah, no. Actually, because what you guys do is actually very important for the mining space. I think sometimes overlooked the importance of it. Because it is an additional cost that people are like, everybody's trying to stay by as cheap as possible. But the insurance has come a long way since I got into it back in 2019 timeframe. It's come a real long ways. So you guys,
Insurance is like never like, oh wow, this is great until you need it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those things.
And it's
I'm in insurance, and insurance sucks.
Yeah.
Like just like, it's like, even I'm like not like excited to pay my home premium. Like it sucks. It's just a necessary evil to be a legitimate industry. Like it's just, it comes with the course.
Right.
And, that was really what we felt, for our firm. We're a insurance brokerage firm. We've been around for 25 years. I moved to Houston in 2019 from New York before it was trendy. And we do things on the life insurance side, the health insurance side, the, property and casualty side, which is like your business insurance. And, on the Bitcoin mining space, we were doing a lot of work in energy in 2020. As we were growing the firm in Houston, you kind of have to do energy. And what ended up happening was like, we were starting to see some of our energy clients ask us about, hey, if we set up this container and we started putting these machines in there, and like, I didn't know what the hell when they mentioned an ASIC, I was thinking a running shoe.
Right.
And like, I didn't know what they were talking about. And so I had, one of our team like start to look at it, and they weren't really sure what was going on. And so I had a client, Jeremy, and Jeremy was the first one that was like somebody I was really close with, where like I had a long-term relationship with him, and I could like act dumb. Right. And like, he called me and he's like, hey, I'm doing this like Bitcoin mining thing. And he was and I was like, all right, you're like the fourth one to talk to me about this. Like, what the hell is it? Like, I don't know what it is. And at the time we were actually,
you didn't know what Bitcoin was?
No, Bitcoin, Bitcoin mining operation. Cause I was just kind of like bringing on my team and being like, hey, they've got this like equipment. It's in a container. Like it mines Bitcoin, which like, I understood that. I understood like, how to get Bitcoin, but I didn't understand like the components that went into it, right? I knew that there were machines that guessed a bunch of numbers. You guess it right, you get a reward style. That was the remedial understanding. And so I was talking with him, and he's like, well, ironically enough, at the time we were going to a McLaren event in Houston. He's like, my buddy that I'm doing this Bitcoin mining thing with is coming. You could come talk to him, and he'll tell you, like how the whole thing works. Well, it turns out it was Marshall Long.
Okay.
And so I show up to this thing, and we're just like walking around, and I've got my two dogs, like two.
Of course, Marshall's going to a McLaren event. And was he driving like a Cybertruck?
No. So the best
like
part
pre-Cybertruck release.
Yeah.
Marshall.
Oh yeah. Well, and this is like 2019, right?
Yeah.
So like, and somewhere in that time range, right? I don't remember 2021 and 21. It's all a blur. But so Marshall's got like flip-flop shorts, t-shirt. Like, I don't know him from Adam. And Jeremy brings me over to him, and I've got my like.
Is it Jeremy Gutierrez?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So he brings me over to
Savant Energy.
Yeah.
Little shout out.
Yeah, dude, guy's the best.
Yeah.
And so he brings me over to him, and I've got like my two golden doodles with me, and I'm like, hey man, like, so Jeremy told me you guys are like doing this Bitcoin mining operation, like. And, he tells me he's, part of Rhodium as well at the time. And I'm like, so like, walk me through how do you guys do insurance? Cause like, this is an unfamiliar space. My team didn't really get it. Like, and it didn't seem like there was a lot of information out there. And Marshall goes verbatim, cause I still remember this. He's like, what we do is at Rhodium, we take our hard-earned money, and then we go out to brokers like yourself, and then they give us dog shit, and we pay them for it. And then when we buy more machines, they give us more dog shit, which we stack on top of the original one. And I'm like,
that sounds very Marshall. Very Marshall.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, got it. And he goes, and he like looks at my dogs, and he goes, you rename your company Fluffy Dog Insurance, and I'll give you a shot at what we do. Like, first 30 seconds of interaction, and I was like, very nice to meet you, Marshall. And Jeremy looks at me, he's like, that's Marshall.
That's Marshall.
And he's like, he's one of the OGs in the mining space. So I had like no clue who I just met. And then Marshall and I are still close and still work together this day. But it was like, that was my first foray into it. And then, to the business side of it, which I'm eternally grateful for, during the time that like Rhodium and Marshall was like building and he had negative time on his side, he took the time multiple times to meet with my team and teach them. And it was awesome. Like sitting there with notes, and he'd pull up a picture and be like, this is what an awful operation looks like. Here's what a good operation looks like. And he went through schematics, so he like taught us from the inside out, ground up, and like just pointed us in the right direction from like a fundamental understanding. And that just really helped us like take off. So it was always awesome. But it was always funny because I would always bring on our team and be like, hey, so this guy Marshall's going to jump on the call. I have no idea what he's going to say. Right. Like he's not very like corporate. I was like, so just roll with it. Like there's a treasure trove of information. I was like, so for 45 minutes, like dig. And like, if he goes off on a tangent, like we'll try and reel him back in. And if he says some offensive shit, like totally fine. Man, like it's going to be the thing.
I'm saying Marshall to me is one of the dudes that like, he doesn't want to act like he cares as much about things, but he really does. Like he actually really cares about furthering like Bitcoin and the Bitcoin mining industry and like helping people kind of establish their business, in this case, like a product that's going to benefit miners, and really just helping people out that are showing any type of like desire to get into the industry. Like he sacrifices a lot and puts a lot of time into like helping other people without getting really anything out of it. Now he always finds a way to monetize too, but he is like, he tries to, it's a hard shell, but a big old soft teddy bear. You know what I mean? Yeah. He really cares a lot about trying to help people.
And especially like being a guy that like I had just met, like he obviously knew Jeremy and he did as a favor to Jeremy, but like we were super, super grateful then and super grateful now. And it was like a great like foray into it because we had no clue. But the good thing is like nobody else really had any idea at the time. We were kind of the first ones to be fishing. Really? Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Like we were the first ones trying to figure out and like negotiate with carriers, and because people were insured incorrectly, and what was happening was like they were getting a piece of paper that they were paying for, but there was nothing there. And when they had to file a claim, they were screwed because carriers will insure a bunch of stuff up front. They'll ask questions, but they ask a lot more questions when you go to file a claim.
Right.
And when you're just, a data processor or a data warehouse, and then all of a sudden you come back and it's wires over here and air filtration and immersion cooling, and you've got this out in West Texas, and that, whoa, that's not what we signed up for. Like you didn't disclose any of this.
So did you have to go through that education process, then go and educate the carriers?
So
like, how did that process go if they were originally doing the dog shit stuff?
Yep.
How did you guys transform that into?
So first we really started with like kind of learning what the whole system was about, right? And at that time, it was a handful of carriers that would like even consider it, but it was kind of like they didn't even know what they were insuring, and then you had to kind of walk them through and disclose that. Simultaneously, what ended up happening was Thomas Shuchuk, who built BitSure, that's now Evertoss, was coming up in the ranks, and we met him early on. And so it was my idea in the beginning, because in New York, we had originally built a carrier called Tradesman. So we're the brokers, but we had built an insurance carrier called Tradesman in the past that worked really well working with like contractors. So it was my idea in the beginning I was like, let's go build a carrier for Bitcoin miners. Like, right now there's no carrier out there. And then I met Tom and I was like, fuck, guy's like 3 years ahead of me. I was like, there's no way we're going to catch him in time. And at the time, like, we talked to like NYDIG, and NYDIG was like, they couldn't say anything, but like, it kind of seemed like they were already on the same track. And I was like, all right, this guy has a ton of experience and he's already 3 years ahead. And that group has a lot of money. And it seems like they're sniffing around the same idea. Like we're 2 years too late.
Selling insurance? NYDIG?
I haven't like really stayed in touch, but I think they offered some kind of like vehicle
product
on that side.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we went to Tom. We're like, hey, like, let's do this together. And then we'd love to be one of the groups that worked with y'all early on. And, your team teach our team a little bit more, because what was happening was like they had a lot of influx because they were the only game in town. but they were focusing so much on like, hey, we got to build our capacity, right? Like how much we can insure per site, getting reinsurers covered. So like you have like layer one insurance, which is like whatever the carrier is. And then you have like reinsurers, like the Swiss Re, Munich Re, that's kind of like the back end. So Tom and them needed the capacity. They were focusing on that side of it. So they were just getting an influx of miners, like just coming to them. So we're saying like, hey, we'll be that buffer point where we could help with like the underwriting interface with the clients, acting as a true broker, because they were, carriers don't want to deal with the end clients. The carrier wants to deal with the broker deals with the client. We go back to the carrier. And then our broker's job is like, we keep the carriers honest to make sure that they're doing the best deal possible for the client. And even though we had a phenomenal relationship with BitSure at the time, Evertoss, like we still need to make sure like they were being held accountable to whatever else was in the marketplace. So they couldn't just like have a monopoly and be like, hey, here's the pricing. And they never did that. But like as a broker, that's like kind of our job. So that was really kind of like how we started, was like making sure that like we understood things in and out and we could paint that picture to the carrier of, what's actually happening behind the curtain, making sure they understood what they were insuring. And then more importantly, if a claim ever happened, making sure that's done right. And one of the things that we have that a lot of other firms don't is we have a full claims team on staff. So when that, claim happens, no one's calling the 1-800 number trying to file it. Our team is representing them to the carrier. So it was also like educating our claims team of like, okay, when this happens, we need to know how to ask these questions to make sure that the carrier is paying that claim in that event. Knowing if we were overclocking, knowing if it was going to be air filtration, cooling, like what time of the year it was.
Is there an issue if they're overclocking? Sorry to jump in, but yeah. So like, does that basically, how's that handled by the insurance?
So part of like what we do is like depending on if you're like using a Luxor or groups like that, and I'm blanking on the exact name, but like we can basically plug into the machines and say, okay, we're going to have this data feed go right to the carrier. And you get like a 5 to 10% discount.
Like the progressive snapshot.
Yeah. It just accepts
what they try to do when you plug into your car.
Right.
And I'm like, no, I can't really see how I'm driving.
I know.
You're going to charge me more.
I've had one.
Well,
and I'm getting rid of that motherfucker.
Yeah. I was going to say the only thing is this one is like actual voluntary versus like the car companies just selling your data without you knowing.
Yeah.
So basically,
you seen the
like,
kill switch thing? Sorry, we'll go back. We'll save that for 10 full hats.
Yeah. We so basically, like, let's say you have a machine, you can voluntarily say, okay, these are our insured machines. We work with a group like Luxor. We're going to have these machines monitored for the insurance carrier so you have a live feed. So you could absolutely overclock, but if you're doing it all the time and the machine catches on fire, you short circuit, something like that, there's an issue. But vice versa, if you're staying within a certain range, if you're not running it too hot and something happens, you have a much easier chance of having a claim paid because you have all the uptime feed.
Yeah.
And so like, but by doing that, you also get a 5 or 10% discount. So like there's a reward beyond just the claim. It's also saying, hey, we're going to give you a discount for this.
Yeah.
We've also done things to get further discounts like safety manuals. So like our team, so led by a guy by the name of Dave Garr, and the branch of the group that we work with is called Navigator Risk. So part of what they do is saying, okay, like before you build this Bitcoin mining site, or if you are building it, we'll have the inspection done. We'll take a look, make sure that, you have the proper spacing between everything, make sure the wiring's correct, understanding what you're doing on immersion.
Are they Bitcoin mining experts or are they just risk people?
So Dave actually mines himself.
Okay.
So Dave has the personal experience as well. Okay. So when we were talking, like when I'm talking about like how we started with Marshall, like in the beginning, it was like, what's an ASIC and what's air filtration? By the end of it, it was like, okay, we're using this immersion cooling fluid compared to that one. That one gums up that. And like, so we got so deep on it because Dave was already in the space. So like Dave already understood all that and he just geeked out and went for it. Like after the first meeting, he called me and was like, I need to run point on this. Like this needs to be like my project. So pretty much everything that we get, we funnel through him because he just knows that world. So with like somebody like Navigator and with Dave, like they could build a safety manual and a training manual for the people that are on site. Just having that piece of paper and applying it could be another 5 or 10%. And they do that whole thing for you. Obviously like at a cost, but it's not that much, right? And they'll also do, from a safety side of things, is saying like, all right, like, hey, here's the proper spacing between containers, between machines, depending on the style or approach that you're using. Here's the way to do it that is going to be the right safety protocol, not just for you, but for the carrier as well, based on what they're seeing out there. And so like simple things like that, because as you guys know, it's like how quick we plug in. Like, let's get the ball moving. Like, okay, we got the shipment coming in. This is here. Everybody's slapping stuff together. They're moving really quickly. You know, take a breath, make sure that this is all being done correctly and you have it like properly set up.
I'm curious if over time you'll get better rates, or if certain manufacturers will be suggested in terms of like if there's repeat issues with certain kinds of miners in certain kind of climates.
Well, yeah, you're not getting insurance on like an S9 like a couple years ago, right?
Yeah.
And like, and because that's the thing too, is like, you know, you think about like construction, right? Like you have like 100 years of actuarial data in construction. For Bitcoin miners, you have like 4.
Yeah.
So like where you lose actuarial data, you got to make up for it in transparency. Yeah. And so that's what I love about miners is like for the carriers, for them to get an understanding, like we try and paint the picture to them like this is the most transparent industry that you'll get, because you could have live feeds all the time. They monitor their electricity usage. Like you only have a handful of risks that are built in. These are going to be isolated things. So it's very easy for them to understand it once you remove the term Bitcoin from it and just are able to kind of walk them through what the machines are and get them a little bit more comfortable with like the overall structure and what's being done. Because it's not like, you know, you're reinventing the wheel. It's a data warehouse with data processors, but it's just going to have a different spin to it. So 60 to 70% of what you're insuring is stuff that you're used to. Just, you know, the things that are different are going to be like one from a business operation standpoint, like, you know, we can do like business interruption insurance. So like if your site goes down, like insuring like some of the costs that are associated, like your electricity costs or stuff like that. We're working on a product that insures like the loss of value for like what you are actually mining, but we can't really get a carrier super comfortable with it yet, even though we think it's like the most simple thing in the world of just like, what's your normal uptime? What's the amount of Bitcoin you normally mine? What's the cost of that Bitcoin and what's your normal electricity?
Is that because the volatility in Bitcoin price or what?
Kind of. It's just like there's no like real like hedging mechanism for them to like have a counter risk to that. And so they're kind of pushing back on it. And also because the price of Bitcoin could go parabolic. So to your point, like on the volatility, like it could go down, but it also could rip.
Right.
So it's like, imagine if something happened and you were, you know, down on a contract.
Yeah. Bitcoin hits 250 or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy.
And now you're on the hook and like you might be down for, you know, a year.
Right.
It's just too long of a time horizon for them to be exposed on. But one of our main goals when we were doing this was the main thing that we saw as the number one issue. And this was the first thing that I really focused on and made my mission was the volatility price and how it corresponds with the price of machines. And so how you're asking about like, you know, how you're insuring like the actual machines, certain models, going a little bit like more simplistic was like, how do you value those models? Right? Because I bought a machine for 10 grand when Bitcoin's at 60,000, Bitcoin 17,000. That replacement cost of that machine is no longer 10 grand. It's 1 or 2,000, right? Because Bitcoin's price has changed and what I could go get on the market.
Well, this also ties in just the natural volatility in the market, right? And why people would potentially be hesitant to get insurance in the first place. It's already a kind of marginal business. And if Bitcoin was a tank and it's like, well, fuck, now I'm out of business, but I have insurance.
Well, and think about it, right? It's because it's like now it's like I'm paying, let's say I bought all that insurance. Like I did my site in one shot and I got, you know, 500 machines, just making up a number. And I bought them all at $10,000. Bitcoin price plummets. Now my replacement cost, I've insured it at 10 grand, but the actual value of my machines is 2. My margins got crushed, but I'm still paying insurance as if it's 10 grand, but it's not. So one of the first things that we worked on and we worked with, you know, multiple carriers is quarterly rebalancing. So if Bitcoin prices crash, you can go back to the carrier on a quarterly basis and say, hey, you know, I don't want to keep paying premium based on a $10,000 value of my machines because here's the fair market value of them right now. They're at 3,000, right? Same thing occurs if it goes up, right? So now, like, let's say I had $10,000 machines, Bitcoin goes from 50,000 to 200,000. Well, all of a sudden the replacement cost of those machines is much higher, because if they all burn down and I have to go back out to market, I'm not paying 10 grand, I would be paying 20 or 25. So it's a risk reward on both sides. Is if you move down, you save money, but if that goes back up, now you're underinsured. But what it really does is it levels out the playing field. So when you're making more money, Bitcoin moves higher. You can insure at a higher level in theory, because you're making more money and you want to insure it at a higher level. When Bitcoin goes down, you could reduce your out-of-pocket cost because your machines are going to be of less value, and that can rebalance on a quarterly basis. So that was one of like the first things we focused on, because that, to your point, was like one of the main reasons why nobody wanted to buy something, is because they felt like they were overinsured or underinsured, and it was too much of a moving target to wait on a yearly basis if you paid too much or you paid too little, and you didn't have the right things worked out.
Have there been more like groups that are underwriting the policies than when you first got going? Like, it's a lot easier to find someone to underwrite it?
I wouldn't say a lot easier, but the appetite has definitely increased. And I think
is it because of like the snapshot kind of deal? Like, I mean,
like the technology has definitely increased. I think the carriers have gotten more of an understanding on it as well. And I think it's also just, you've had a bigger risk pool, right? So you think about like who was mining in like 2019, 2020, it wasn't that many people. Now you just have more of a global presence. So like for us, like, you know, we were only doing US based insurance in 2019, 2020. Now we can insure on, you know, 4, 5, 6 different continents. So we could do things in Canada, we could do things in South America, we could do things in the US, obviously. So we can insure things kind of across the globe, and that's diversified the you know, exposure, right? So if you're an insurance carrier and you have all your concentration in Houston and Harris County, like, you're going to be very worried because you have a huge hurricane risk every couple of years. Well, if you have, you know, exposure in Harris County and then you have, you know, other exposure across the country, your Harris County is still going to be a little bit higher, but you have all these other pieces to kind of diversify your risk pool. So that was the main thing, was like, people didn't want to like have a high concentration in one industry in one location. But as more miners and people came onto the market, you were able to diversify your risk pool either globally or domestically in different geographical locations, which makes it a lot easier for a carrier to get comfortable with underwriting that risk. It's more of a capacity issue than an ability to find a carrier. So it's like, you might have a site that's too big for one carrier. So you kind of build it like a wedding cake. Like, you know, this carrier takes the first $5 million of potential losses. This carrier takes the next 5. And each layer that you stack, it gets less expensive because you got to blow through each of the beginning layers. So it's kind of like bank liens, right? Like, I'm taking first position, second position, et cetera. So sometimes, depending on the size of the mine, you know, that could be something, as well as like what it's hooked up to. So like, if I'm a traditional energy, oil and gas client, natural gas, on-grid, off-grid, renewable, and this is just going to be like my side piece, well, we might want to make sure that we're finding a way to write that into the original policy. Or if we're going to try and bifurcate that and remove it out, how do we do that properly, right? So you want to make sure that those two coverages speak together. So if there is a claim, they're not coming in and saying, hey, you never told us this was on site, or, you know, thinking that it was added to your policy, but no, this was a traditional policy for, you know, your solar operation or whatever you had.
Are on-grid versus off-grid sites, is one of those more expensive in terms of the policy?
It more depends on your geographical location. Like it really can, but like, Bitcoin mining is like so nuanced that it would be much more of like what your setup looks like, you know, where you're located versus on-grid or off-grid.
So one of the things I'm automatically thinking about is off-grid sites, to where if there was something with the smaller well sites, I'm not particularly concerned about, but some of the larger ones that are like blowing and going, something happens with the well, right? That then affects the data center, but the data center has coverage, the operator has coverage. It's like, who is technically, which carrier is technically responsible for any damage to?
Well, and that's where you gotta, you know, make sure that you have that in the policy language, right? Because like, that's not like the first time that's ever happened in the world. You're always going to have, you know, different businesses that could go on there, and everybody, you the goal for insurance is always to get somebody else to use their insurance versus you using yours. So that's why you have to kind of have clear guidelines of which policy is going to respond to what and what falls under what prerogative. And I think that's why you got to have somebody that understands like both sides of that fence, and how that really works. Because if you don't understand, like what we find is every broker is going to say yes to underwrite a Bitcoin mine. That doesn't necessarily mean they know what they're doing. So
that was going to be my next question, is like, how much have you seen over the course of the past 3-4 years policies, I guess, and maybe you haven't seen it because you guys are writing real policies, but miners that thought they had insurance that turned out when something happened, it wasn't actually covered.
Yeah.
I talk to my clients a lot about that, just being careful on their kind of what policy they're picking up, because people think they're buying a policy and then some shit happens and turns out they didn't actually have any coverage.
Dude, that's one of the biggest ways we get clients is, so most of what we do is like doing reviews, right? People generally have some stuff, like they may not have insurance. That's obviously a different thing. But like, speaking to your point, like if they have insurance, the first thing we ask for is like, let's do a review to see what you have. And so that's for two reasons, is like, understanding the quality, understanding the language of what you're insured on, but then also pricing. Like, so there was a client that I won't mention the name, but they paid like $1.8 million in premium, and we reviewed it and we're like, we could have done this for $600,000.
Yeah.
And like, it's just like you had so much overlap, so much crap on there that you didn't need. Like, nobody took the time to actually ask you a question and go through this, that you overpaid $1.2 million for. And the difference was they did that when Bitcoin was at, 60, 65,000. So they didn't care.
Yeah.
Until the next year when Bitcoin was at 20 grand. And then all of a sudden they could have really used that 1.2 million that they overpaid for. And so that's a big piece of it. The analogy that we use is like, you don't really know how good your CPA is until you get audited. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, the best strategy in the world for taxes is like, just don't pay them and hope you don't get caught. Right? Like, it's the most efficient. Wouldn't advise it.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, if you want to really minimize your taxes, like, there's a lot of people in America and like a lot of people don't file a tax return. So, but you really don't know how good your CPA is until you ever get audited, and the stuff that he suggested, the stuff he does gets tested. Unfortunately, the same thing applies in insurance. It's like, you don't really know how good your plan is until a claim happens. And you don't really know how good your broker is until a claim happens. Because the same thing occurs, like what I find fascinating, and this isn't just like Bitcoin mining, this is insurance as a whole, is like, you have insurance brokers that work with you for like 10 years. They do your coverage, they do your quotes, they bond everything, we get paid commissions, right? You file a claim, they're like, here's the 1-800 number for Hartford. Just call them and tell them what happened. What? Hold on. I thought that was your job. No. I broker the coverage. I shop it out. But like, when it's a claim, we don't really have a claims department, or, you got to handle that directly. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, this is crazy. So we see the same thing as like, hey, we had this claim. We went to the carrier, they're telling us that we never disclosed any of this, that they're not paying this claim on it. And quite frankly too, like, the carriers are rightfully suspicious, because you go back to like the old Bitcoin mining days, like, Bitcoin crashes, light our shit on fire. Like, like, they're worried about that side of it too, is like, oh, hey, oops, something caught on fire. And the difference is like, the carriers don't understand it.
That's never happened.
Yeah, never. So like, from a carrier perspective, they're like, we didn't understand what can and cannot go wrong. So it's hard for us to say, like, call bullshit on something like that. And that's why we bring the transparency side of it, is like, hey, you're willing to show what's going on under the hood, the carriers will get a lot more comfortable with it. If you have nothing to hide, they will be a lot more comfortable with paying the claim, because ultimately what we believe in is like, how do you legitimize an industry? Insurance is a piece of that. Because imagine like, if I was a real estate guy and you've been an attorney for a long time, like, imagine like going to a bank trying to get like a loan for real estate and being like, nah, I'm good on insurance.
Yeah.
They'd be like, cool, we're not giving you a loan.
Not.
Yeah. Like, it's like, they will give you literally a checklist of like, here's everything you need. And same thing, like, if I'm a miner and I'm raising capital, like, you couldn't raise capital in private equity without D&O insurance, which is directors and officers, which basically protects you personally if the investment goes south, that the investors can't come after you and take all your personal items. So same thing, if like I'm raising capital in the Bitcoin mining side and people are like, oh, D&O insurance is super expensive. Well, because it's a really high risk industry. But yeah, dude, if it goes sideways, they can come after you and your family personally. Like there's no capital raise that would ever happen in legitimate business land without the consideration and understanding of D&O. It just doesn't happen. And so like, that's where we feel is like, okay, like we understand the margins are tight, but like you want to truly legitimize an industry and have people take you more seriously, like from a government standpoint or what you're doing, like this is something that needs to be factored in.
So what would you say, you guys, like how many megawatts worth of policies do you think you got out right now? Or secured, I guess.
It's probably a better question for Dave. I'm not really sure. Definitely a couple hundred at this point.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we haven't really had the chance of working with like any of the publicly traded guys. You know, we've had conversations with them, but the challenge is like when you're a publicly traded miner, they love to say they work with Marsh and Locked In and all the big firms for their investors, right? Like if you're going public,
could they self-insure at that scale?
Not really, because they
it's a huge number.
Yeah, and they can and they might like just have like a higher deductible, so to kind of like self-insure like the beginning part. But it was actually interesting because I talked to, you know, another colleague of Marshall's, and I had asked him, I'm like, you know, hey, like we've had a couple of bats with these publicly traded guys and they haven't really worked with us. You know, it's frustrating because I feel like we've really dedicated the time, and like these guys at Marsh and everything else are just, they're trying to surf the wave, right? Like Bitcoin's up, they're at every conference, Bitcoin's down, they're nowhere to be found. And, you know, I was like, we've put in the sweat equity and like, we just haven't won. And he's like, dude, he's like, if I'm going public, I want to be able to say I've got $1 billion broker, you know, that's also a publicly traded company to back me. He's like, it's really that simple.
Yeah.
Is he's like, no one's going to get fired for hiring Marsh or hiring Locked In or anything like that.
Just tell him you played for the Jets, dude. What's the deal?
Like, I threw a ball one time, like back in the day, like, you know.
Man, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was like, man, I want to ask him about the Jets stuff. So
I've been looking for a way to throw that in.
All right, throw it, get it. Throw it in there. Okay.
I love that I have like a 2-year-old now, because like if I make corny jokes, it'd be like, it was a dad joke. Yeah. Like it wasn't bad, it was a dad joke.
Yeah, man. It's not a bad joke, it's a dad joke.
Yeah.
But seriously, the Jets, I want to hear about this. You told me, and if you can't talk about it, we could cut it out. But you remember we were in Miami last year and we were talking about, you told the story about Sanchez and Tebow?
Dude, he was awesome. Yeah. Well, like, so like, I mean, I was with the Jets for like literally 2 seconds. Like it was from in like the spring into the summer of like 2012. And it was like Sanchez.
Well, wait. We got to set the table better. You played college ball where?
Albany. So it's like, since we're in Houston, it's like kind of like a Sam Houston State.
Right. Okay. Worse. Yeah.
So wasn't really on anybody's radar, and had a really good year my senior year, and that just kind of like gave me some opportunities.
What did you throw for and all that? And how good did you guys have a good run?
Yeah. It was the first time we ever made it to like the FCS playoffs. And I broke like a bunch of school records, and like, you know, we had a good year in that. You know, I was just like a tall dude, and I threw at do you remember like Mohamed Sanu?
Yeah.
So I threw at Mohamed Sanu's pro day at Rutgers, and he ended up being like a 2nd-round draft pick. And so all the scouts were there to see him, and Albany's uniforms are a exact ripoff of LSU.
Oh, is it really? Okay, nice.
So like I'm wearing like all purple, and then people would be like, who the hell's the tall doofy guy in purple? Like, you know, he threw the ball
for LSU.
Yeah. And so I got a couple conversations out of that, and then got picked up as the Jets as an unrestricted free agent. I had trained. There's a place called Test Sports in New Jersey, and that's where a lot of the Jets guys trained in the off season. So even like while we were just waiting for like camp to start, it was like Bart Scott, Sanchez, like a bunch of the players there. So I got to like hang out with them a lot, and Mark was funny as shit. And
Bart Scott seems cool too.
Dude, Bart's awesome.
Yeah.
Bart had some great one-liners. He was always just a pisser. Like he showed up one day with like a white Lamborghini. The next day came back with a Ferrari. He's like, yeah, I didn't like it, so I brought it back. We're like, That's not how like Lamborghinis like work.
It's a return policy on this thing.
Yeah. So he had a bunch of great one-liners, which I definitely won't put on a recorded line because that guy could still kick my ass. But no, Mark was like the ultimate guy's guy, like just totally good dude. Tebow was like, just, it was always like a camera was on.
Yeah.
That was the only thing that was tough about Tim was like, you would always think like he was like, the US president giving a press conference and like he needed to change the world.
Dude, that doesn't surprise me at all. That's like exactly what I would guess.
Yeah. And you're just like, bro, like it's 105 degrees. Like we just got our ass kicked by the defense. Like I don't need like a presidential stump speech to try and like get my day going. Like just be one of the dudes.
It's June, bro.
Yeah. Okay. Just be like, dude, that's
we don't have a game for like 3 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And but like Mark, like to your story, like, I won't say the name, but Mark was, always very successful with the women he was with. And like, he knew that I relative to like the sports facility, I lived close by. That's why I trained there. And so like one day he's sitting there and he's like texting this woman that, at the time he had been dating, which was public knowledge. And he's like, so Dan, what are you up to tonight? Going home to have, dinner with your mom and dad? And I'm like, yeah, Mark.
Yes.
He's like, what are you guys having? And I'm like, I don't know, Mark. Probably like pasta or chicken parm. He's like, oh, that's cool. He's like, you know who this is? Yeah, I'm gonna fuck her tonight. Thanks, Mark. He's like, yeah, have a great time with your chicken parm. But like that was him, just like zingers all the time. And you knew something was coming, you just didn't know what. But he was a great guy to be around, like very fun.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, and he does a good job broadcasting now.
He's a good dude, and that team was like, that was like when Revis was there and Rex Ryan was there.
What was it like playing for him?
Rex was exactly as you think.
Really?
Right? Like he's straight to it. He's super high energy. He's a ball buster. Like the difference is like on field, off field. Like the hardest part in the NFL is like what is very good and acceptable in college is like you're thrown off the field in the NFL. Like I'll never forget, like, one of the hardest things in the NFL to like learn as a quarterback is the pre-diagnosis, before the snap. Like, and this is why like I always respected somebody like Peyton Manning, but like you respect it so much more once you're in it, is like you step up to the line, if like the nose guard moves that way or the corner goes that way, like one play has 17 different mutations that are all going to happen in 10 seconds. And you have to know exactly what each person is going to do depending on how the defense responds and how the play is going to change. So like that ability to like self-diagnose is incredible. But like, and the other part is like throwing the ball before the receiver breaks, like well before the receiver breaks, which in college, you kind of like guy plants his foot, you let it go.
Yeah.
In the NFL, it's like 4 yards before he plants his foot, you're letting it go, and you're letting it go on like a frozen rope.
Right.
Like you're not giving it air. Like you are zinging it. And just how quick these guys get in and out of breaks is just, it's hard. Like they have a saying in the NFL, like the game doesn't slow down, you just speed up. And it's very true.
I could see that. I always like, it impressed me, the receivers catching the ball, because you'll you watch the highlights in the slow-mo and it's like you realize the ball, they're turning around and making eye contact and the ball's there.
But they also expect
they just know it.
Like they are expecting to come out of their break and the ball to be right here. And that was the difference. I remember there was a guy, Stephen Hill, who came out of Georgia Tech. He was a freak at the time. He was their second round draft pick. And I ran like a 20-yard dig route, which was like an in. And I just remember I threw it like before he broke. It was just a route on air. And like he came out of the break and like hit him right here. And I like, just did like a kind of silent, like on the side, like, yes. And Rex Ryan goes, the fuck are you celebrating for? He goes, that was a pick. I was like, I hit him in the numbers. He goes, yeah. Like I said, a pick. He goes, that ball needs to be out here in front in the NFL. He goes, get the fuck off the field. I was like, what? Like hitting a guy in the numbers is a pick now? And like, so just like that for me, like always stuck out, where like I thought I did a good job and he like literally took me out of the drill. And I was like, man, we're in a different world now.
I saw Rex Ryan or his brother. I know that they look just like each other. at a pancake restaurant in Nashville one time. I was like,
bet they were getting after
dude,
it.
that's freaking Rex Ryan or his brother.
Well,
over there
his
just
brother always
freaking
had the
pounding
beard.
some. Yeah,
Rex was
no
pretty clean.
beard.
Yeah, Rex was always pretty clean shaven.
It was actually, I think it was like this last year because he just got on in Detroit, didn't he? So in some capacity, one of them got hired on for something.
I was like never a big fan. Like,
yeah,
I always like to play the game. I was never a big fan. Yeah. So like I never like watched or followed. I was always the guy like, let me go spin the rock.
Right. My dad was a college basketball coach, and that's not that story you told with Sanchez is not the same one you told me, but still a good one. But you told me. We'll talk afterwards. It's probably one you didn't want to.
Yeah, a little bit because like they have a lot more money than me. My insurance coverage is not enough for slander.
No, but I get it though, because like my dad, he obviously I grew up watching it, and I coached high school ball, and my dad coached. He just retired like 2 years ago. I don't know if he's watching basketball games since. Like, just doesn't. He's watched some games of the school he coached because a lot of the players that he recruited are still there, but like he doesn't like sit down and watch any other like college basketball team or at all. It's just kind of like, yeah, man,
it's crazy. We've got
done.
one coach, we've got 2 pro athletes, one retired, and me pickleball.
Oh,
it's crazy.
I forgot about the pro pickleball tour over here.
I mean, so what does that make me? Because last time we played pickleball in your office, that was
let me tell you, boy, that was 2 years ago.
That was a straight defeat.
But you were 5 days, the same 5 days a week. 5 days a week.
You gave me the same spiel last time.
Hey, I went to the Woodlands. I was just wanted to like see this new gym, and I walk in and I see this guy just freaking wrecking shop, man, and.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I was impressed.
Yeah. Did you do the thing where you go to the gym to like read the newspaper and then come back home?
Yeah. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna go sit in here and pretend like I care about.
I was like, what are you doing here?
I was like, man, why do you sweat so much?
Yeah.
Are you okay? But yeah, no, he's in the wrecking shop, man.
I love that.
He's like the Rasheed Wallace of the pickleball courts.
I don't even know who Rasheed Wallace is.
Oh my gosh,
that sounds like a compliment. I think.
Yeah, no, it was good.
I would love to like play pickleball a little bit more because I like thoroughly enjoy it. I just like every time I feel like I'm on like a group chat or something, it's like I never can like get out there.
Dude, I love it. Me and Sarah go play pickleball. We used to play a lot more. We gotta start doing that again.
Come to the club, dude.
Yeah, I need to. I've moved up to freaking South Dallas.
You're in BFE now, dude.
Yeah, but I need to get down there. My life has settled down some a little bit, so I'm like.
So maybe you'll respond to like emails and texts.
Yeah, look, you're on the show.
Don't hold your breath. Don't hold your breath on that one.
Yeah,
man, it's getting better. Sarah has taken over my schedule.
Yeah, where is it's getting better from like what benchmark?
Right,
like,
yeah, man.
Like where did
better's
we start?
Better.
Like,
yeah, I got a lot of room to improve still, but it's getting better and progressing.
Right. Yeah, we're
Justin's a work in progress.
Yeah,
we're working towards that.
Oldest person in Bitcoin, but I'm still a work in progress.
You're the grand old man.
Yeah,
it's like you and Fred Thiel are like up there together.
Man, I was just in his office and he's like, yeah, man, you made a wall. He's like, did you have a goatee? And I'm like, no, I just had like dark hair, man. It's turned all white. It really stuck out
that's
there.
Like one of the things that I love like in the Bitcoin mining space is like working with like other people that are in like a millennial like generation or just like either like young Gen X or older Gen Z is like, it's just a fun industry where it's like the vast majority of people are going to be like, I'm 34. It's like the vast majority of people are going to be within striking distance up or down, which is like very fun considering like, most of the time you don't have that. Like most of the time you're going to be erring in my side of the business on like over 45 crowd.
Right.
And so it's really cool to like,
boy, I'm knocking on that door. Ooh.
But I mean like, but you're like a very boyish,
thanks.
Under 45. Like,
that's like another way of saying you're incredibly immature for your age, but I appreciate it.
I phrase
but
that
you should still do some estate planning, maybe buy your headstone and your plot.
Like get ready for it.
Yeah. See, I shaped it much nicer.
You did a good job, Jake. He's no holds barred over here.
Yeah, I think like that's like one of the things that's like really fun, like working in that space is like you don't have to like put on like a polish. You could like just like go riff with people that are like your age and really like go through it. It makes it much more enjoyable.
I love it. And like I used to be a coach, and I felt like being a coach kept you young. And now it's like
absolutely does.
Yeah, now this keeps you young too because everybody is so young.
Being a coach is like those are just such transferable life skills.
Mm-hmm. I loved it, man. Like, that was like the most fun I've ever had.
Well, and I still believe that like as somebody who owned, as a managing partner of Hotaling Insurance, and having people like that, are part of our firm across the country, being a parent, like you could spend 90% of your life speaking in coach speak and it just be perfect.
It resonates.
Yeah, like it absolutely just resonates. You could teach life lessons. Like you can transfer so much knowledge and information just through coach speak. And I think that's just so powerful.
I agree.
Like
more of us should just be like Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
Great show. I don't know if I'd go by like his life lessons, but yeah, overall, like I was always like, one of my favorite ones was like, it takes, absolutely zero athletic ability to be in the best shape. Because that was always me. Like I was always like doofy, but I was like, you're not going to get here at 5 a.m. I will. You're not going to stay till 7 o'clock at night. I will. Like that was always my thing, was like, I was never the most gifted person, but was like, I'm just going to outwork you because you're not tough enough to do it. And so I think like you take those like lessons as a kid, if you're taught the right way or coached the right way. And I think like when I like look back, like I can cherry pick, in kind of 4 or 5 year windows, mentors and coaches that like completely changed like my life. Like, when I was in high school, a guy by the name of Coach Cardi. In college, it was a guy by the name of Ryan McCarthy. Like you have guys that like completely transform where I'm like, I don't know who I am today if I didn't have that person teaching me this stuff, or just seeing things that, I learned what hard work looked like because I had to stare at it every day. And, I knew what accountability meant because this guy was always accountable for something that he did. And like, I think that's why I'm a believer in like young people, like always, even if you're not good, being part of some kind of sports or some kind of team versus, today people just sitting at home on their phones. Like, because when you're on that like team environment, like you can't just, go into your little cave and not be there for everybody. You have to be accountable for everyone, even if you're the bat boy. Like, it sucks, but like sometimes you got to learn that in life. Like you're not going to be like the star person. Like everybody has a role to play. So there's just so many life lessons that are super transferable that I think are great. And whether you're a coach or a player, like if you're a coach, it's like being a parent. If you're a player, it just prepares you for the world.
Yeah. No, man, I the lessons I learned from the coaches I had, mainly my dad, honestly, but he coached forever. So, but yeah, man,
my dad was my coach when I was in Little League.
Yeah.
And the lesson that I learned, I was going to receive no special treatment, and that he benched me pretty much the entire season.
Yeah.
Well, but I feel like that's like,
you're the worst player. You're the worst player on the team. You're not making it to the field.
But I feel like that's like dads always overcorrect on that because they're like, oh, if I'm coaching my kid,
yes,
everybody's going to be looking at it, so I have to be like extra critical. Like my dad was like the old school Italian that like at football games would like sit in the back right corner with a cigar and like just fuck you on his face and not talk to anyone. And so like I think from like the time I was born to the time I was 18, like my dad probably said 200 words to me throughout his career. And just like, but like he was a coach like twice for me, and both times he was like, you're a dickhead. I'm never coaching you again.
That's how my dad was too.
Yeah, he's like, I'm never doing it.
This is horrible.
He's like,
I get paid to do this, and you won't even listen.
He's like, you're the worst. Like, all you want to do is like fool around, and I'm just like whatever, Dad. Like, come on,
you're my dad, man.
Yeah, this is fun. He's like, no shot.
No shot. I got a hilarious story from my dad when he was coaching a little league team. I don't know if it might be what is it, NSFW kind of one here though, so I'll tell it after we're done, but it's one of the funniest ones ever. It was hilarious.
Oh, and old school like coaching stories like that.
Oh my gosh,
they're definitely not suitable for like any environment. And like in today's day and age, it's like Sports Illustrated. It's going on the wires.
Yeah, it definitely would meet that criteria. But well, listen, man, I've enjoyed it. This is good. I'm glad we finally got to do it, and I apologize it took so long.
No, all good.
But yeah, look, you guys are probably, as far as I'm concerned, and the groups that I know, probably the premier insurance group provider or broker for the mining space. So, yeah, people don't be scared to reach out and call you and talk about the offerings that you guys have. But it's something a lot of people overlook. We had an issue one time on one of the sites I was at, and I called you the other day about another one. which actually wouldn't mind you talking about real quick, but a lot of people that are getting sites are in rural areas.
Yeah.
And in Texas in particular, a lot of that's going to coincide with the opportunities that you get with floodplains.
Yeah.
I've got one we're dealing with right now with that. What are some of the things people could do real quick before we're wrapping up? What could they do to address some of those matters?
Yeah. So that goes back to like from a risk management perspective, right? Is like, it's the same, whether it's a Bitcoin miner, like I'm building whatever kind of facility. If I'm going to be in a floodplain, well, I live over in like the Meyerland Bel Air area.
Yeah.
We got to build our house,
Whoa, bro.
What's up, buddy?
Come on in. Shut the door. Jackson, just welcome to the show, bud.
What's up, man? We're talking about floodplains.
You got anything to add?
No. I like the Ronaldo kit though. So like I'm over in the Bel Air Meyerland area, right? Like you can't build a new house unless it's 8 feet off the ground. Same girl, different dress, right? So if we're in that floodplain, okay, well, what's the zoning areas around there, and can we do any kind of elevation? What does that need to look like? What can we put under there that gets the carrier comfortable, but also like running that by them before you go pour cement and do shit.
Yeah.
Like, hey, here's where we are. Here's what we're thinking. Here's what the site looks like. Do you feel comfortable with that? When you have somebody that's like being a true, risk manager for you, you have those conversations and it could save you a bunch of money before you just go do it.
Right.
Think that putting it on stilts is going to help you. And then it's like, no, that's not really what you're looking for. Right.
Basically, don't wait to call y'all. Get ahead of the game, make it part of your kind of plan and your design up front.
And it's a conversation, right? Like, like I said, insurance sucks. We're just trying to make it suck a little less. And like, we're not here to like be pitchy. Like, we're really want to try, like, we believe in the industry. We believe in working with people. We were just as passionate about it when Bitcoin was 17,000 as we are at 70,000. So, we've been kind of consistent in that. And we believe like, the people that we work with, we want to help them. Obviously we're a for-profit company, but like, it's really freaking cool in an industry that's as outdated and antiquated as insurance to be like, we could be at the forefront of something that's starting and beginning and working with like super young people that are passionate about this and believe in the same cause. Like, well, let's go do it. And let us, kind of act as that consultant side versus always coming in and being like, oh, I need to do this right now. Give me a quote. I've got 17 other quotes from other people. Like, can you do it? And it's like, dude, we're not trying to be like a quote whore.
Yeah.
Like, let us work together and let us build the relationship and not just, try and pin things together. Like, respect the fact that what we're trying to do is help y'all long term, because then, we're not getting that phone call a year later when things don't work out because we're starting at the beginning. So, please give a call over. Our firm is Hotaling Insurance Services. You go right on our website. We have a whole page dedicated just to Bitcoin mining, and you could submit any kind of inquiry there. You could also reach out to me on like LinkedIn or my email at dtd@hgfin.net. However you want to reach out, or, if they call you, maybe we'll get a call 6 months later, just by the time you see the email. But,
my bad, man.
Happy
my bad.
to get in touch.
My fault. I am. Just email Sarah.
Just for the love of God.
Just do that. It'll find its way to me. So, my bad.
Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming, man.